Good morning, everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Present.
McCann, Donovan,
Here.
Montgomery Step is absent. Goebel,
Here.
Leyba Gonzalez,
Leyba Gonzalez here.
Dillard is absent. Gaston,
Here.
Bush,
Here.
Frank,
Here.
Moreno,
Moreno present.
Elo Rivera. Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Here.
Hall.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's begin with non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of MTS. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. We have several. Alex Wong, please unmute yourself now.
As data researcher for a ride SD, I believe increasing green line frequencies to 7.5 minutes or better is crucial. Look at all the transit-oriented developments under construction in Mission Valley. Riverwalk Golf Course is being redeveloped into 4,300 homes and 1 million square feet of office. San Diego State is transforming the parking lot surrounding Snapdragon Stadium into 4,600 homes, 1.6 million square feet of office, classrooms and labs, and a 400-room hotel. Westfield Mission Valley was recently sold to a developer who will redevelop the area into a mixed-use development with multifamily housing as well as retail. Mission Valley is becoming MTS's biggest ridership cash cow, but to milk this cash cow, you need to maximize frequencies. 15-minute green line frequencies are not going to get people to switch to transit. You need at least 7.5-minute frequencies to make the green line convenient and time competitive with driving. Therefore, MTS ought to think twice before supporting an airport trolley, which would merge onto the Green Line tracks, creating a bottleneck that could permanently limit Green Line frequencies to 15 minutes. By contrast, a people mover alternative would not share tracks with any existing trolley lines, thus freeing up trolley tracks and operators towards maximizing Green Line frequencies. Consider also that the people mover will be automated, saving MTS operating costs, which is essential given that MTS faces nearly $50 million in annual operating deficits. The people mover will also allow more flexibility. With the press of a button, MTS can instantly deploy more people mover trains if there are large crowds flying into town for conventions and other events without having to worry about staffing shortages. The automation also
30 seconds
allows
left.
MTS to easily provide 24/7 service.
Next is the original DRA. Please unmute yourself now.
Well, good morning, tyrants. Just wanted to say that it's so interesting covering the border and just seeing all of the things that are happening. And it's like, I guess you guys wouldn't be concerned if Muslim military men are crossing the border, right? They're dropping off their dog tags and just leaving it at the border. I mean, because they are seeking asylum, right? It's like there's nothing to be concerned about there when we have foreign military, not just military age men crossing, but actual military from foreign countries. But that's xenophobic probably for me to say, right? I mean, it's nothing to worry about. I mean, it's not like they've been talking about another 9/11 that could possibly happen. And then I think about the Pandemic Preparedness Treaty and how they're training UN soldiers to then come in and make sure that we're all complying with the lockdowns that they bring forward to us, because they do have, you know, some different threats that are going on, like the bird flu, right? And some more COVID strains, some flirt and different things. We've got the measles, tuberculosis. I mean, there's many of them to choose from as far as like which pandemic they're going to lay down on the people. So, I mean, I guess it's not a concern when we have foreign military just men just coming across and dropping their dog tags because they're seeking asylum, right? So, I mean, as soon as they come to your door, you're not going to be concerned, right? No. And because, I mean, we don't even care that little children, like little girls, get raped here by these illegals. It's
30
just normal.
seconds left.
It's like the new normal, right? I mean, you guys realize these are our replacements and that you're going to be replaced too. You're not outside of it. You're just helping facilitate it. So it's just interesting, and I can't wait to find out where the new migrant transfer permanent center is. So that will be very interesting. Good on you guys for trying to hide all this stuff and being complicit in an invasion of our border. It's treason. It's so great. But nothing to worry about, right?
Your
Not
time has
until-
expired. Gail Jennings, please make your way to the podium.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone.
the purpose of why I'm being here, after 20-something years, I'm still appalled. This is 2024. My mother passed on San Diego Transit bus 20 years ago. I look around and see, I'm not going to say what I have to say, but the issue is why they do not have the bus drivers or equipment on the bus if somebody have a heart attack or no kind of advice on the bus for if people have a heart attack or anything. I'd like to know that. It's been 20 years and it took me a long time to ride that bus again. So on my way down here, I see up-to-date cameras, but I don't see no equipment for somebody's life that, you know, when they need be in state. So what's going on? And my second question is, all the buses over here in Southeast San Diego, certain areas, they so dirty and nasty, I wouldn't even want to get on them, but that's the only transportation that I have. You can't convince me that they clean the buses every day. They just can't convince me of that. No, I didn't bring the pictures of some of the buses that are so dirty and so nasty. And we're paying, you know, public people, we're paying to get on the bus, seniors, everybody. You can't tell me that you clean them buses every day. It's just outrageous. I just can't believe it. And not, like I said, my mother died on the bus 20 years ago and you still don't have no advice for nobody, but you have brand new cameras? I just can't understand that. I just can't understand it. I would like somebody to give me an answer for that.
Usually, thank you very much for your public comment. Usually we don't answer questions during this part of the meeting, but we hear your request for, I think, defibrillators and cleanliness, and we will make note of that. Thank you for providing public comment.
And Sheriff, maybe we could have staff follow up with her separately before she leaves. Thank you for speaking, ma'am. But appreciate it.
Next is a phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, Truth, unfortunately, I have to point out more lies from MTS. Someone sent me an article about the copper line. The lies in it. Number one, MTS spokesman Mark Olson said staffers will be out at stations between El Cajon and Santee to gather input from passengers ahead of a vote scheduled for June 20th. Lie. This was already approved. That's why it's already being built and will start in September. MTS does not care about public input. Two, Olson said service will be similar to what it is today, from 5 a.m. to midnight with 15-minute frequencies during peak hours. Lie two. The East Green Line terminates at SDSU at 10:45 p.m., and there is never a 15-minute frequency going east, maybe only going west. The Copper Line is an offensive name that suggests that people served by the Arnell, Gillespie, and Santee stations aren't even worth a third-place bronze. And to call it an East County connector, are Lemon Grove, El Cajon, and La Mesa not East County too? And another transfer would need more wait time, up to 30 minutes or more. Why would someone want to wait for yet another trolley when the Orange Line could instead be extended to Santee to end transfers for stops in between El Cajon? Why are the people served by those three stops the only people who are being segregated with an inequitable extra transfer, sacrificing those lives to allegedly benefit everybody else? As always, equity is something perpetrated systematically only by those in government. This Copper Line deal is as bad as Gopal's lie that military-like fare recovery operations are for safety. MTS needs to be honest. This is about saving money at lesser-used trolley stops. That's it. One trolley car versus three. But what about special events like Padres games? Who cares if there's room, right? So much for people getting to work. This Copper Line ain't worth even a penny. And it's these types of major lies that justify my call for the dissolution of MTS. Let Sandag take it over. Make MTS a committee with public members to finally get real rider input rather
Your
than
time has
finance.
expired. A representative from Mid-City can. Please unmute yourself now.
Good morning, everyone. It's Guadalupe, community organizer at Mid-City Can. I'd like to thank the MTS staff for their participation at our verification pop-up event on May 7th in City Heights, where they were able to verify over 100 accounts. We really look forward to seeing more updates about this verification process, as it is a barrier to a lot of youth and SDM writers, and perhaps an extension post the June 30th deadline and more outreach, since there are still a lot of writers who are not aware of this requirement. So please, we look forward to some updates on that, and thank you for your time.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's move on to our consent items, which are items 3 through 20. Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent item?
Chair, apologies. Really quickly before we do that, could I ask if it would be possible for the board to receive some information on defibrillators and other emergency equipment that is on our trolleys and buses?
Absolutely. Is that something that we could accommodate? Okay,
Thank
we
you.
will do that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Why not in the lock zone too? Item 4, Marcus took a vacation to his former home, Portland, Oregon, for the APTA conference. But on January 22nd, there was not a significant rain event. There was a significant negligence event that cost MTS millions, so MTS should sue the city of San Diego to recoup costs. Item 6, the level and quality of public transportation service is definitely provided in a non-discriminatory manner. It's equally inefficient for all. The public engagement process is obviously a failure, since there have been major service changes that are causing disparate impacts and disproportionate burdens to riders. It's more inequity that the rural routes don't even have specific time goals. What's funny is it says MTS meetings are to be in convenient and accessible locations, but nothing about safe locations, right? It was interesting to read that in 2021, that actor Gracia Figueroa worked at the county. The 2022 survey found at least 16% of people using public transit don't even have a job. For the listening session, those paid and crazy CBOs seriously want MTS to become a farm. Fruit trees for riders waiting. What a laugh. But notice that their results are 180 degrees difference from Red Hill's outdated and delusional survey. Item 11, $20 million less in investments for MTS. And it might help if MTS gets a really good investor person that can win big, like the city of La Mesa did. Item 12, no to 18 to 24-year-olds riding for free on the taxpayer dime while our elders still have to pay. Even if they're former foster children, they're still now
30
adults,
seconds
and
left.
it's time to become responsible. If MTS can reduce service to 3 trolley stations because of financial savings, then let's do the same for this, which serves even less people. Also, the soon-to-be related YOP program is already costing taxpayers about $10 million a year. It'd be cheaper to buy everyone a car. Item 18, $280,000 to replace 4-year-old cracked and waterlogged feeder cables downtown. Did any repairs or upgrades ever happen in the last few decades? In this 1,050-page
Your
agenda.
time has expired. The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, as far as the youth pass goes, I mean, kudos on you guys for, trying to listen to that woman. Hopefully something gets done and it's not just brushed to the side. But, as far as the youth being able to ride for free, we also have illegals that are able to ride for free. And I'm not sure how that's equitable when, other people can't in the community. And it's not safe for, unaccompanied minors to be riding when there's, these military age men and potentially foreign soldiers that are dropping off their, IDs at the border that are riding. And then as far as your bathrooms goes, it's like, it's great that you are bringing bathrooms forward for the employees, but what about everybody else? Because those porta potties are locked. So, I mean, you're providing it for some people and not other people. And so when are you going to start providing it on a massive scale just for everybody, so that when they are riding transit, they're not having to deal with this? And then as far as the minutes goes from last time, you guys keep kind of keeping out keywords as far as like what I'm talking about with the Irish Transit Center. It's the illegals that are being dropped off there that needs to be written in the minutes. It's not just the activities at Irish Transit Center. And I don't understand why, if you guys want people to have permits to sell stuff, why you're not, going and making the Chinese that are down there engaging in business and selling different things get a permit to do it. Because you make little kids, if they want to have, a lemonade stand
30
come
seconds
in
left.
and, make sure that they're paying you guys a little stipend or fund, money, just in order to have that lemonade stand. But then we can allow illegal activity to go on at Irish Transit. It's crazy the way that like some stuff is recognized and some stuff isn't. And so you guys are treating our replacements like they're better than us and they have more freedoms, more, just everything is given to them. And then it's like, if we come in and ask for anything,
Your
I mean, you
time has
guys want to shut
expired.
people up.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
Make the motion. Did you want to pull 7?
Yeah, so I would second the motion, but I would like to pull 7 for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent items from Director Hall. We have a second from Director Bush.
Well, he wants to pull 7, so I'll let him.
And now we will move to discussion. And did you have any discussion, Director Hall? Okay, we'll go to Director Bush, and then I know Director Gonzalez and also Director Moreno. So go ahead, Director Bush.
Oh, yeah, so if staff doesn't mind giving an overview, a quick summary of item number 7, which is the portable toilet services for employees and contracts awards. And so I support the item, but I did have some questions too about it.
Director Bush, just so I'm clear, are you pulling this item or are you asking for more information within the context of the consent items?
I don't should we just, I don't think I understand.
Oh, do you want a separate vote on this item?
If that's more, we can do that if that's more efficient, is that?
Okay, I don't think you're pulling it. Okay, we'll go ahead. Please go ahead and proceed.
Oh, okay, I'm open.
I'll ask procurement to sit up at the desk, please.
Mike Wygant, Chief Operating Officer, San Diego MTS. So let me just give you a quick overview of the project. It's portable restrooms throughout our service area for operators and employees, both for security, for the light rail system or for trolley and for bus. Some of those are remote facilities where there are no other brick and mortar facilities. Based on where layovers, relief points for operators, we need restrooms that don't have utilities. Sometimes we have locations where they can use a public restroom or a restroom as part of a retail facility. Quite a few of the restrooms are actually, in essence, kind of overflow where there's a brick facility, a brick and mortar facility. But because of the amount of vehicles or service that comes in any one particular time, we have to have more than one restroom. Places like Old Town, UTC, Fashion Valley, those are places where we already have facilities, brick and mortar facilities, but we have additional units to deal with the overflow or the amount of people that come all at once because of the way our system is designed. There's a lot of meets, and so we have a lot of drivers or operators that need to use the restroom at the same time.
And I can add to that as well. So we also try to make deals with local businesses, libraries, et cetera. But when those businesses and libraries and public buildings close, we have to have access for our drivers because we continue to operate service after they will close. And then on top of that, we have layover locations in downtown San Diego, for instance, where there are no businesses that we could access. So we have to actually put the porta johns right there on the sidewalks. Our goal is to have a downtown layover soon. That's a Sandag project. We've been working on it for a number of years. But once that happens, hopefully we'll be able to put a facility there at that location. And then we also have been upgrading. We're putting a new permanent facility, and it should open next week at Palomar Transit Center for our employees as well as those of Transdev. And then we're putting a permanent facility at Euclid, also for our all of our employees, including Transdev. But and then we have a permanent facility at Fashion Valley that we've recently upgraded. So there's a whole toolbox of ways that we can provide our employees with the access to restrooms. And this is one of those tools in the toolbox.
Great. Okay. And so I see on the service hours, so it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., but So then will the bathrooms be available after those times, or is that just the service like when it's being maintained and cleaned?
That's the standard hours in which the units are cleaned. They're open 24/7 through a lock and
Great.
key
Okay.
to the operators. Each unit has a schedule of when it's cleaned. The mass majority of them are 6 days a week. All of them have the provisions as an on-call. In other words, if we have an indication of there's a problem, they can come out immediately. But the standard cleaning service is within that window.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. So Sunday, for example, when they're not scheduled for cleaning, but the drivers and the employees will still have full access to them.
Absolutely.
Great. And then have the bargaining units been communicated about this and they're supportive? Because I know that was an issue one of the big issues last year.
Yeah, we have regular meetings, monthly meetings with the bargaining employees to talk about issues, and bathrooms are a hot item that we always talk about, and things that we need to improve and areas that we need to focus in on.
Great. So I fully support the item. I appreciate that, those clarifications. And then I think moving forward, I would be interested in seeing how, bathrooms is a big discussion. I don't think necessarily that it needs to be just MTS that has the full cost of these bathrooms. So I'm willing to have discussions with our city and maybe even the county about maybe if there's opportunities in areas to make them open to the public, like at least, like I say, for National City. Yeah, I'd like to further that discussion, but I think this is a step forward. So I really appreciate staff, your diligence in working on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bush. We'll go to Director Gonzalez and then Director Moreno. Or we'll go directly to Director Moreno.
Thank you. Very supportive of item number 7, which I'm understanding is a rebid. So happy that MTS continues to work on employee restrooms. Also, I am supportive of item number 12, the Pronto Extended Pilot Program. I want to acknowledge MTS staff and our CEO for the work on this program. I'm very happy to see this move forward. I think it's a great program that's going to be helping build our ridership and also will help the youth leaving the foster care system as they establish into adulthood. So kudos to MTS. Thank you for listening to the board. And I'm happy to make a motion if there is one on the floor. If not, second it. If not, approve the item. Thank you. The items. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Moreno. We do have a motion from Director Hall and a second from Director Bush, and I see Director Ela Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I also wanted to make brief comments on item 12, the Pronto Extend program being extended to June 2026. Very, very excited to see this. It's not a big program in terms of total dollar amount or even number of participants, but it has a huge impact for the foster youth and former foster youth who are able to participate in the program. We've heard firsthand from folks at the county, Your Safe Place, Just in Time for Foster Youth, that have thanked the board for our leadership in making this program a reality. These organizations have had hundreds of thousands of dollars freed up from their budgets, which allows them to provide better services for a group of people which are, by most accounts, the most vulnerable folks in our communities in terms of risk of homelessness and other outcomes, overwhelmingly at no fault of their own. And so this is an incredible opportunity for us to not just invest in long-term ridership with young people, but also do so in a way that is targeted to have a real impact on young people. My hope is to make this permanent over time, but in the meantime, seeing it extended to 2026, I think is a very, very good thing and something that this board should be very proud of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Director Ela Rivera. Any further discussion on the consent items? Seeing none, yeah, lots of good stuff in here. We have a motion from Director Hall and a second from Director Bush. All those in favor of approving the consent items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to our discussion and report items, beginning with item 21, the fiscal year 2025 operating budget discussion. And we will invite Gordon Meyer to present this item.
Good morning. My name is Gordon Meyer. I'm the manager of financial planning here at MTS. And this morning, I'm going to provide an update on our proposed FY25 operating budget, including a discussion of recent news regarding the state Senate bill SB 125 funding. So before we start looking at figures, I wanted to provide a brief overview. So we had presented an initial draft of the FY25 operating budget to the board during the last meeting in April. Since then, we had continued to make revisions and we had formulated a final draft that was supposed to go to the Budget Development Committee on May 8th and then be at today's meeting for final adoption. However, on April 30th, we were alerted that the state Senate Bill SB 125 funds were being frozen for distribution to transit agencies across the state. So in the May 8th Budget Development Committee, instead of proposing a final budget, we discussed the SB 125 news and the potential impact to our budget. And during that meeting, we also provided a staff recommendation to postpone planned service increases until the future of these SB 125 funds are known. And so going out of that meeting on May 8th, kind of the next piece of information we were looking for was the release of the May revise of the state budget. So that was released on May 10th. During that meeting, we were notified that these funds were going to be frozen essentially until the end of the budget negotiations. So we're likely looking at the end of June, but they're frozen indefinitely. And in the May revise, it included delaying $1 billion of the originally planned $2 billion for FY25, pushing those funds out until FY26. And so the proposed budget still has to go through the legislative process with the negotiations between the governor and the legislature. And so the final timing and amounts of these funds is still unclear at this point. And so for MTS, that has a significant impact on our budget planning. So we were expecting $136 million deposit or check from the state in April per the published guidelines. For the entire program, we were planning on receiving $284 million over multiple fiscal years. We had $211 million planned in our operating budget between FY24 and FY28, and then we had an additional $72 million planned in our capital budget between FY25 and FY28. And so this news has a significant impact not only on our FY25 operating and capital budgets, but also the out years and our financial outlook as well. And so without this SB 125 support, we would be looking at the fiscal cliff approaching in FY26, as we'll get to later. And so the agenda for this presentation is to review the final assumption changes that we had made since the prior draft. That'll provide us with a baseline budget to which any changes in response to this SB 125 news will be applied. We also wanted to give a 5-year forecast of the baseline scenario, which is essentially how things were looking prior to this SB 125 news. And then before we start looking at the impact of SB 125, we want to briefly review what's in our plan, specifically what's in our operating budget. And then we want to look at the projected impact of the SB 125 news on our FY25 budget, as well as our 5-year forecast as well. And then discuss various alternatives to addressing the deficit moving forward. And then also briefly touch on a new budget timeline where we'll be proposing adding an additional budget development committee and then moving the public hearing that was originally going to be scheduled for today until June 20th so we can pass a budget before the start of the fiscal year in July. And so here I wanted to just briefly cover the changes that we had made since the prior presentation. So on the revenue side, we made one change. We added $3 million to our budget for TDA in the operating budget. So in the prior presentation, we had mentioned that SANDAG was assuming a negative 0.1% growth assumption for TDA, which we thought was fairly conservative, and it was much more conservative than Avenue's projection, which is the third-party contractor that works for SANDAG and does their own independent projection. So we reached out to them. They said we could increase our claim amount, and so we're increasing it by $3 million. And depending on how cash receipts do, we may or may not need to draw from the reserve at the county level for TDA. So if we do hit the more aggressive target, more in line with Avenue's projection. We won't need to draw from the reserve. If we do end the year at a number closer to Sandag's more conservative budget, then we would need to draw from the county TDA reserve. We do have a healthy reserve though, so it's not significant in terms of depleting that reserve. The only other change on the revenue side was the reserves line. This is the MTS reserves, which is our operating deficit reserve. So we here in this budget draft, we had the amount of reserves decreasing by 790,000 versus the prior draft. That's because we increased revenues more than expenses in this final draft, and so we needed less reserve funds to balance our budget. And so we were projecting 459.3 million in revenues, which was an increase of 2.2 million from the prior draft that was presented in April. On the expense side, we also made additional changes. So we increased the budget for personnel by 3.7 million. 2.2 million of that was directly related to the salary study that was approved at the last meeting. We also finalized our assumptions for the CalPERS pension plan costs. So once we received approval of the salary study, we went ahead and did our complete projection, which not only reflected the salary study, but also all of the headcounts, the headcount changes that we had made in the end of FY24 and into FY25 as well. And then the other major change since the prior version was in energy. So we decreased the budget by 1.5 million. That's all related to compressed natural gas. So we had been budgeting $6.40 per decatherm in the prior draft, but we're bringing that down to $5 per decatherm based on a couple pieces of information. I think I mentioned this in the last meeting, but we asked for a fixed price quote from our vendor, and they gave us an estimate of $5.50. That includes a significant risk premium. And we've also our own commodity costs over the last few months has actually been under $3. So $5 could still end up being high, but it's all dependent on the local pipeline situation. But we feel that that's a fairly middle of the road approach for the CNG costs. So overall, the expenses were projected at 459.3 million, which is an increase of 2.2 million from the prior draft. And then here you can see our revenues and expenses combined. So we had the recurring revenues going up 3 million from the prior draft. That was the TDA. And then our expenses increased by 2.2 million. So our structural deficit was projected at 87.8 million, which was a slight reduction of about 800,000 from the prior draft that was presented in April. And we were presenting a balanced budget using 21 million of reserves, the last year of stimulus funding, as well as about 20 million in SB 125. And so before we start looking at the impact of SB 125, we wanted to give that 5-year projection of a baseline scenario as if everything was going to plan and we didn't receive the SB 125 news. And so for the 5-year projection, we take the FY25 proposed budget and then we assign different factors, growth factors for the next 4 years. And then we model that to see the overall changes. And so on the revenue side, we had passenger revenue growing, but still not getting back to the pre-pandemic level, as you can see on the top chart to the right. For FY25, our budget was assuming 7.5% year-over-year growth in passenger revenue. We assumed the same growth percentage for 26, and then we gradually brought that down by about a percentage point each year, just to reflect no longer adding major service. And then on the federal revenue side, we assumed stable growth at just about 2% per year. And then for state sales or for sales tax revenue, which includes both our TDA and our Transnet, we used Avenue's projections, which, as mentioned, are more aggressive than the ones provided by Sandag, but we think and hope that they're more realistic, and there's something that we'll continue to revise as Avenue releases new forecasts going forward as well. On the service level side, which has a major impact on our overall expenses, in this baseline scenario, we assume that we added in all of the bus and trolley service increases that were included in our SB 125 plan for 26 and beyond. On the ADA paratransit side, which is a demand-based service, we assumed 10% year-over-year growth in 26 and then another 10% in 27. And then we tapered that off because that gets us close to our pre-pandemic baseline. And in the next 3 years, we taper that growth off significantly. And there were no other changes in our 5-year forecast to assumed service levels. And then on the expense side, so for our contracts and a lot of our general expenses, we use CPI to forecast that over the next 4 years. And so for FY26, we were assuming 3.5%, then we have it going down to 3% for the next 2 years, and then going down a little further in FY29. Wages and benefits, we have 4.5% growth assumed for 26 and 27, primarily based on the collective bargaining proposals that we've seen recently, which assumed 5% wage increases over the next 3 years. And then we have that tapering down in 28 and 29. Purchase transportation, so that's our contracts for our fixed route service and our ADA paratransit. So here we know what the contract rates are because they're 10-year contracts. So we built that in and it reflects some of the service as well. And then energy, we look at the Department of Energy forecast for the rates for electricity, natural gas, as well as oil. And then we layer on top our assumptions for SDG&E increases. And then it also reflects our planned service adjustments as well. And so you can see that we have a high 8.6% in FY26, mostly due to adding service. And then you can see that starts to level off at around 4% per year. And then the bottom line is the average expense growth in our 5-year forecast. So you can see FY26 is still fairly high at 7.2%, mainly driven by the FY26 service increases in our SB 125 plan. And then you can see as that's the last year of significant service increases, and then you can see expense growth start to reapproach the more average 4% and then 3% per year. And so here you can see what that looks like in terms of figures. So in the FY25 column, you can see we were projecting an 87.8 million structural deficit, but we were balanced with reserves and the one-time funding. FY26, we were also balanced, but utilizing the rest of our operating deficit reserve balance, which is the 66 million there towards the bottom. And then we also had 36 million of SB 125 funds. And then you can see in this projection, we were also balanced through fiscal year 27. However, it included 110 million in SB 125 funds to do that. And then so you can see fiscal year 28 is when we were projected to hit the fiscal cliff here with a projected operating deficit of 79 million. And so before we start looking at the projected impact of the SB 125 news, we wanted to just briefly cover what's in our SB 125 plan, specifically what's planned for our operating budget. And so you can see there's 211 million in total that was planned over 5 years. And the activities are highlighted by the security enhancements, all the bus and trolley service additions that we were planning on. And then you can also see that we had 75 million on that bottom line that was just geared towards balancing our structural deficit. And so the impact of these funds not being available does have a significant impact overall. Some of these activities we recommend moving forward with regardless of whether we receive the SB 125 revenue, specifically the security enhancements. We think the benefit to safety and security as well as the potential impact of the additional visibility to help our revenue figure as well and reduce fare evasion. We think that's important. Iris Rapid, that service went live in October of 2023. So we're not trying to pull back service that we've already added. We're also contractually obligated to operate that service because the infrastructure was funded by a TIRCP competitive grant. But we are recommending suspending or delaying all of the remaining trolley and bus service additions in order to help address this lack of funding now. And so, as mentioned, this does significantly impact the timing of the fiscal cliff. And so on this slide, we wanted to cover our projected impact to our FY25 budget and then also how we built that into the 5-year forecast as well. And so on the revenue side, we're projecting a $1.2 million decrease in passenger revenue. Basically, we're adding less service, so we expect to add less passengers as well. We're also forecasting a reduction of 2.4 million in other income, which is a function of our energy credits and interest revenue. So on the energy credit side, less service means we consume less of the renewable fuels, and so we generate less credits. And then on the interest side, we were planning on that 140 million deposit in April. And so if that's uncertain, we back that out and don't plan on that. And then on the expense side, we have about 20 million in expenses related to these SB 125 activities. And so we were recommending to keep the 4 million for Iris Rapid operations in the budget as described on the prior slide. We were also recommending to keep the 3.5 million for the security enhancements. And then when we back out all of the other activities, which is primarily the service increases that haven't gone into effect yet, then we come up with a reduction of about 13.2 million in expenses. And so if we back out all the SB 125 revenue, and along with the impact to our other operating revenue, we see, or we project a $23 million reduction in revenues. And then on the expense side, a negative 13 million reduction. So we're projecting a net unfavorable impact of about $10 million for FY25, which means that we would need to use an additional 10 million from the operating deficit reserve to balance our budget in FY25. And then as far as the 5-year forecast assumptions, so since we're backing out the planned service increases, we've reduced our passenger fare assumptions as well as our energy credit and interest assumptions as we did for FY25. On the expense side, we use the same expense growth factors that we did in the baseline scenario. So the CPI, energy rates, and all that is exactly the same. But we just removed the expenses and revenues related to the planned SB 125 activities. And so here you can see the first scenario where we remove all the SB 125 revenue as well as the expenses related to those activities we wouldn't move forward with. And so you can see here we start with a structural deficit of 78.2 million in FY25. We are balanced with reserves usage in that last year of stimulus funds. 26, you can see that we use the remainder of our operating deficit reserve, which is the 51 million towards the bottom, and we hit the fiscal cliff in fiscal year 26. So we would have a projected operating deficit of just under 37 million. And just for a note on this slide is that if we were to bring a budget to the board today to adopt, it would be the FY25 proposed column where we do have a balanced budget. And then any action we take to address the structural deficit going forward would be either reflected in an FY25 mid-year amendment or the FY26 budget. And so with the fiscal cliff approaching as early as FY26, we did feel it was important to bring ourselves back to the strategies for delaying the fiscal cliff. And so we went through these with a more fine-tooth comb versus the last presentation, and we assigned some dollars to some of these. So we did identify 30 million of flexible funding from the FY25 capital improvement program that we could shift to operations on a one-time basis. So keep in mind that these are funds that are currently allocated to existing projects. However, they're not tied to a specific project legally or contractually. It's not a grant fund, so they technically could be shifted away from existing projects. We could also change the preventive maintenance sharing methodology between capital and operations. So we touched on this in the last presentation, but basically anytime we increase our preventive maintenance federal funds in our operating budget, historically we've moved an equal amount of TDA from the operations budget back into the capital budget to keep the capital budget whole. If we do this, we could shift up to $38 million per year to the operations budget. And then lastly, related to the capital budget is we could look at our sharing methodology for state transit assistance or STA. So we generally receive about 40 million per year, and we put a static amount of about 11.3 million in the operating budget, and then the rest typically goes to capital. We could look at shifting up to 20 million of that per year from capital to the operating budget. And then kind of something that we want to emphasize is that all the top three options that we just talked about, they have a significant impact on our capital budget and our ability to complete upcoming projects, maintain a state of good repair, and then also things like the zero emission bus transition where some of these funds are parked. And then some of the other options, we've talked about these before, but do we want to look at changing the fare diversion program to increase compliance and reduce fare evasion? Do we want to look at a fare increase? Maybe with the fiscal cliff approaching in FY26, maybe rolling back planned service isn't enough. Do we want to look at service reductions? We've also heard mention of possibly going after a ballot measure in 26. Do we want to push for a new state sales tax? Very uncertain, especially as they try to balance their budget as well. And then open to other ideas as well. And then, so we did want to highlight that if you take the top three bullet points and we were to do all three of those, which all involve shifting funding from our capital budget to our operating budget, we would be able to balance the budget through FY27 and hit the fiscal cliff in FY28. And so this scenario is what that looks like. You can see the green highlights is the shifting from the capital budget to operations. And you can see here, we're able to balance FY25. FY26 is balanced by shifting about 57 million from capital to operations. FY27 is also balanced, but shifting about 88 million from the capital budget because it includes the 30 million one-time transfer from the FY25 CIP. And then even continuing to shift $58 million per year after that, we hit the fiscal cliff in FY28 with a projected $29 million operating deficit. And so this brings us to the next steps is based on board's approval of the recommendation. We would notify the unions and contractors of our intent to keep service roughly at their current levels. We need to finalize our FY25 budget assumptions with the SB 125 removed and the new projected service levels. We need to come back with the full FY25 budget book, bring the proposed budget to the new BDC, which we're tentatively looking at the next executive committee meeting. We need to have a public hearing on June 20th, which is the next board meeting. The final state budget won't be available until summer and likely not the last few days of June. And so our intent is to hold at least one additional budget development committee over summer to provide updated information on the approved state budget, discuss strategy at that time, and then formulate an action plan, and then ultimately come back to the board with at least an update or possible action. And that brings us to the staff recommendation that the Board of Directors approve the staff recommendation to postpone the Trolley 15-minute add-ons until the future of SB 125 funding is known, and then also postpone the public hearing and implementation date for the Route 910, which was the overnight border express. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. We have several. Carolina Martinez, please unmute yourself now.
Good morning. My name is Carolina Martinez with the Environmental Health Coalition and the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. We're here to express concerns with the prioritizing of security services compared to the removal of service improvements that were budgeted under SB 125. It is very unfortunate to hear that the agency continues to prioritize security over service improvements. And it's very, it seems clear that there's no interest in being nimble and coming up with solutions that could address both under the current budget crisis. And so we're here to request that there is a reconsideration of how the budget is being allocated and how the agency is prioritizing security. over service improvements. It's very consistent, even when there wasn't a budget crisis. So it's not something new. So we ask that you reconsider the budget allocations and that we see more creativity on how the budget is allocated. Thank you.
Phone number ending in 3731, please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Actually, they didn't invest into security until this year. I actually think the trolley often operates like the crazies that the state do, slow with constant stops and sometimes in a filthy state. Seriously, remember when Newscom said the state had a surplus, then all the money disappeared a few months later? Those clowns really messed things up for public transit. And so all of you should start doing some press conferences and make a big deal about it. Say not getting SB 125 shows that they don't care about the climate crisis, the environment, low-income people, people of color, equity, and whatever other buzzwords are deemed necessary to pressure them into releasing the $22 million they probably kept for themselves. And instead of cutting Green Line service to Arnell, Gillespie, and Santee, MTS needs to do something that would not disrupt service areas or harm their customers. For example, more advertising. Here's an annoying idea. Have occasional audio advertisements play on the trolleys. That could probably rake in a premium, especially if it's not overdone. And once again, all of you that are on the Sandag board need to start advocating that MTS requires more investment. There needs to be honesty with those delusional board members who actually believe that increased frequencies are possible. They are never realistic and are unaware of public transit realities, and regular people only get 60 seconds to speak there. So it's practically impossible to address any issue. And also, as far as ridership rates and paid ridership not having recovered to pre-2020 numbers, that's proof that none of you should have gone
30
along with
seconds
the
left.
COVID emergency charade. It destroyed common sense, people's lives, and resulted in inflation. So I remain against all new taxes. I'm also against a fare increase until MTS has actually fixed its serious issues. And what does fare diversion program changes mean exactly? The option smart people want: dissolve MTS and have it become a committee overseen by Sandag. That would save millions. Maybe then someone would actually care about the truly most vulnerable community, our elders. Fact check on that one. Thank you.
Next is the original DRA. Please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, the future, as far as all these deficits and, but it's kind of nice because it doesn't allow you to, push for all of this climate BS that you think that you're saving the planet. And it's sad that you can't even have these, the transit be clean, but yet we pay people more in their salary to not do their job for part of that. So it's like, you can't even upkeep that. You want to put in cameras. It's about surveillance, not even security, which is ridiculous. But you always have it under that guise. And, just wanting to push for a new state sales tax, it's like, when that already happens, when we already pay taxes, it doesn't go towards what it should anyway. And then you think that just adding another one is going to have the people believe that you're going to be able to fix the problems that were created by you guys in the first place. And I think about how much money, I mean, if you wanted more funds for ridership, you should be making the illegals that you're allowing to ride for free pay for the transit. So then, you're not losing money there, but it's pretty ridiculous. And then I think about if, the nation didn't spend $500 billion for this illegal invasion, that would be at least $10 billion per state to be able to make sure that none of this stuff is going on. But then you have to understand that it's an intentional destruction of the nation. And as you can see, it's happening in many facets, whether it's people invading, all of these deficits, all of the problems with the money and just not having enough to take care of what needs to be taken care of. And then we think that we can have billions of people come in and we'll be able to take care of them too. It's very negligent to see what's going on, but it's all by design. It's all intentional. And it has to happen from within. You can't take America out from the outside. So it's intentionally being destroyed, and we're watching it happen right before our eyes. You're just ignoring it, and you don't see the writing on the wall. And that's what's so sad, is that it's putting us in a predicament.
Your time has expired. That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now begin board discussion on this item. And we will begin with our Budget Development Chair, Director Moreno.
Thank you. I made comments, extensive comments at the Budget Development Committee last week, and I will certainly recap Obviously, the uncertainty around SB 125 should give us pause in launching any new services too quickly. I am supportive of staff's recommendation to postpone the increase in trolley frequency and the launch of the new Route 910 bus overnight from downtown to the San Isidro border crossing. Now, my hope is that the state won't follow through with the potential cuts to SB 125 funding, which would allow MTS to begin to move forward with these new services early in fiscal year 25. A few things that we discussed at the budget committee was very heavily lobbying the state by our CEO to make sure that the 125 funding, if it comes in a different form in any other place in the state, that we are at the forefront. As an example, if the Bay Area proposes a bill that would fund their transit services, that we do the same thing and that we're ahead of the curve. We also talked about MTS's CIP portfolio, what that looks like, and how we could modify it if we want to modify it, just opening up the books. But the state budget obviously is looming heavily over us, and we will be waiting onward on the 125 longer term. And as I mentioned at our last budget development committee, I do support the chair exploring a new revenue measure to give MTS more financial independence moving forward. I don't know if the chair would like that to come out of the budget committee, or if it comes out of I believe the previous two chairs actually developed a whole committee for that, right? If I'm not mistaken. And so I think it's high time that we start looking at that for 2026. But with that, it breaks my heart to make this motion, but I will be supporting staff's recommendation on this matter. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moreno. Director Ela Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Member Moreno and the committee for their work on getting things to this point in the process, and thank staff for your work as well. It's always a lot of work, and when the target is moving in such a substantial way, I know that adds a number of layers of complication to what's already a very complicated task. I share the disappointment in the shifts, because these were changes that folks were excited about and looking forward to because of the impact it will have on riders' lives. But you know, we didn't have control over the SB 125 funding, and so we need to pivot. That being said, I do also I understand why there's a desire to see some creativity from the revenue side of things. And I think what I've heard, this is I think my fourth budget cycle, is zero collective appetite for service reduction at this board. This, again, I'm talking collectively, not for each member individually, and a desire to continue to see services expand, to see us really lean into providing the services that riders need and that folks would want in order to begin riding, to add more choice riders to our system. So I'm happy to second Member Moreno. I'm wondering if you'd be open to including in the motion direction to staff to report back to our board with additional revenue opportunities. I am fully understanding that we need we need a big source of revenue, but I don't think that needing a big source of revenue means that we should be taking smaller revenue opportunities off the table. And so at various points in time over the last few years, we've discussed additional revenue opportunities. I'll be honest, even the one that was just floated right now during public comment, I think is a creative one that should be given some exploration. And if it's several $100,000s at a time, that's more is better than less when it comes to revenue. The one that was mentioned in public comment was, the opportunity to audio advertisements on bus and trolleys. Yes, we do listen to public comment, despite what folks might think. But those are the sort of expansive, creative ideas that I'd like to see explored. There's advertising opportunities. There's, I think, a multitude that have been actually presented in ad hoc ways over the last few years. I would love for those to be brought back to the board as part of the broader strategy conversation. And ideally, a draft of that could be included in our June 20th meeting with a further discussion in July. Member Moreno, if you'd be open to adding that direction to provide a draft on June 20th and then having a discussion item in July on additional revenue opportunities beyond a measure, or I'd say in addition to the measure, I'd be happy to provide a second to your motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that.
Thank you.
If I could, we did give a report on non-fair revenue last summer, so we could actually do that again in June as part of this. We have an item coming up right after this, which is about naming rights.
Yep.
That we're bringing forward. Some of you who have visited Gaslamp recently see our $1 million a year generating advertising revenue at that location. So it's very much on uppermost in our minds to see those opportunities and take them.
Yeah, and I think that's for me, knowing that we have these kind of individual items floating around, what would be helpful is a more kind of returning to that comprehensive list of opportunities in the context of the budget. And as having the board have an opportunity to think about what those opportunities look like in the context of our structural budget deficit, and which of those we want to really lean into exploring, again, while recognizing we need the state funding to come and be dependable, and that we're going to need more ongoing revenue of more substantial size as well. So thank you, Sharon, for accommodating that. Thank you, Member Moreno, for being willing to include that in the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Elo Rivera. We have a motion on the floor from Director Moreno and a second by Director Elo Rivera, and we'll go to Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. This is the 5-year look on this thing is the big elephant in the room because we can either raise fares, cut services, or find new funding. And when it comes to finding new funding, we could certainly try to advocate for federal legislation, certainly at the state level, because we're not the only agency. In fact, I think we're managed better or have less of a cliff that we're going to come up to than Orange County, Los Angeles, BART, Sacramento. Everybody's in the same situation, not just us. And so whether the state comes up with a new fee or new sales tax, they're going to have to look at more than just us. Locally, we have potentially 3 half-cent sales taxes that Sandag, I think, wants as part of its development plan. And then each city, I think many cities have half-cent sales taxes on their ballot. So at some point, we have to also read the tea leaves on how much in sales tax is the public willing to absorb for whatever they think they're getting for those sales taxes. Balancing the budget off of shifting capital improvement program funds is a little dangerous to me because it's one thing to replace replacement equipment that has reached the end of its useful life and then you buy a new version. It's different to say we're going to buy brand new things. So when you take away money that's for replacement of end of life things, now you're kind of repairing a car that has 400,000 miles on it and you're chasing something worse in a way, your expenses that way. So I'm not a huge fan of shifting CIP money away from replacement value. We have a great challenge in front of us, surely. But one of the other big considerations for us is how close do we get to that cliff or how big of a cliff? For instance, if we don't get SB 125 money and if we don't shift capital money, then next year we will be $37 million structural deficit. Do we go right up to that cliff and then cut a bunch of services? Or do we say, hey, we have open routes now that still haven't filled drivers, and we say, we won't fill those routes now to have a softer landing to the time when the cliff comes. I'm not saying cut service now, but if we have open route, do we have any open routes left over? Maybe we say, let's not seek to fill those and increase our expenses in this time frame. There's a way to create a soft landing, what really is an inevitable conclusion here at some point. And I think that would be prudent to take a look at that as well.
Thank you, Vice Chair Goebel. Any further discussion? Director Moreno.
Yeah, I feel compelled to respond. I don't want words to be put in my mouth. The CIP budget is one that was brought up by staff at a committee meeting, stating that MTS had a very aggressive and robust CIP portfolio. So my proposal is to open it up and look at what we want to consider. Obviously, security is something that we have to do, right? Because of our federal funds. So in no way did I want to remove any maintenance that is very much needed and required by federal law. But should we take a look at all of our avenues? Absolutely, we should. Is the CIP budget one of them? Absolutely it is. So thank you for the time.
And if I may, Board Member Moreno, the CIP is a record for us, the CIP that we've had these last 2 years. So it's an unusually robust CIP. If we're cutting service, there's no sense in buying new buses if we're going to need to just cut them. You can only have so many spares on your lot. So that's the kind of tweaks that we would be trying to make on the CIP side of the house. There's also more competitive grant opportunities for ourselves, and we've been very aggressive and successful in getting some of those funded through these other grant programs. So you have to have the match for those. And so you would want to make sure you had enough in your CIP to do that. But that would be what we would look for, and certainly not anything that would impair the safety of the system or the state of good repair.
Thank you. Director Hall.
Yes, and I want to bring up the one point that I have been bringing up, the change the fare diversion program to increase compliance. We have way too much free people drive free fares going out there, and we need to really work on that. If people have a problem paying, I have no problem trying to get a way of having them, if we need to ride for free, we need to ride for free. But we need to change the diversion program to make sure that we include those people in there, but also make sure that people are paying. We've done surveys on this already. East County's been kind of the leader in this. We've gone through and done these done these numbers. And I remember hearing a good one was on Halloween. I think it was 66% of the people hadn't paid. And when you look at those numbers and you say 66% of the people hadn't paid, maybe they thought they were in costumes or something like that, so they didn't need to. But that's something we really need to take seriously. And it will not solve the deficit problem, but it might help a little bit. And it might save a program here, save some cuts later on that we probably don't want to make. But the time has come to, basically, if you're going to ride the system, you either need to pay or you need to find a way that we can help you out.
Thank you, Director Hall. Any further discussion on the motion? I will restate the motion as I have it. The action in front of us, which has been moved by Director Moreno and seconded by Director Ela Rivera, would approve the staff recommendation to postpone the trolley 15-minute add-ons until the future of Senate Bill 125 funding is known, postpone the public hearing and implementation date for Route 910, the overnight border express, and direct staff to report back to the board in June with a draft of additional revenue opportunities for discussion by the board in July. Seeing no further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
I vote yes.
McCann,
Aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Step is absent. Goebel,
Yes.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Bush,
Bush, yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn, Hall. Thank you. The motion passes with 13 members voting yes and 2 members absent.
Item 22 is the Boardroom Audiovisual Upgrade and Maintenance Contract Award, and we're going to invite Julia Tour to present the item when she gets settled in. Feel free to get set up and begin your presentation when you're ready.
Good morning, Julia Tour, Manager of Government Affairs. Justin Platzler with Procurement or Procurement Specialist that helped lead this contract effort. We're going to be going over the conference room audiovisual upgrade and maintenance item today. I'll kick it off, just a little bit of background. The equipment in these rooms, boardroom, executive committee room, were last replaced in 2014. So we are lacking a lot of functionality such as, video feed, displayed voting, that sort of thing. So we've been working towards getting a vendor on place to be able to put in new technologies for us. So I'll have Justin take over and kind of run through the procurement process, and then I'll talk a little bit about the actual system that will be put in.
So we collaboratively worked to put together a scope of work that include refreshing the existing equipment in the boardroom and including additional capabilities such as the video streaming, the voting, and along with the voting would be attendance that would be visually displayed. And then we would update the dais to include monitors for easier viewing of the materials. And in addition, we would add a clerk of the board desk to free up some space here on the speaker panel. And this contract would also include ongoing maintenance support of the equipment. The solicitation started on January 10th. We issued the request for proposals, and as a standard, we had a site visit and a Q&A period for all of the vendors. And on the due date of February 20th, 5 proposals were received. From the list here, 2 of them happened to be non-responsive for not completing any forms or even the cost form for one of them. The selection committee consisted of members from finance, marketing, IT, government affairs, and capital projects departments. All of them had an interest in the solicitation and its outcome. And it was evaluated by the qualifications of the firm, the staffing and management plan, as well as the work plan for replacing the equipment itself, and then, of course, the cost and price. After the initial review of the 3 proposals, the committee scored all of the proposals, and you can see on the screen that the top 2 proposers were AVI SPL and EDM Group, and then National Electric Works ranked 3rd. From there, we held some interviews with AVI and EDM, and after the interviews, we rescored and decided to move forward negotiating with AVI only, mostly due to their commitment to completing the project according to our timeline. After some back and forth and negotiations, the committee decided that AVI presented the best value, and they came up with a final score of almost 80 out of 100. So the contract term will include a 3-month installation period with the contract starting June 1st and hopefully everything in service for the September meetings. And then we will have a 3-year base for the ongoing maintenance, as well as 2 one-year options for continued support for a total of 5 years of support.
Okay, so a little bit background information about AVI. They are a global company, but they do have over 100 employees in the Southern California region. So that will really benefit us throughout the life of the contract and during implementation. They have a lot of experience with other public agencies, some of which are here in San Diego. And they are also a preferred partner with equipment manufacturers. So that really helps give us the best deal and the most options for this project. One unique thing that they're going to be bringing for us is a equipment monitoring platform. This is something that we do not have right now. We're going to be able to analyze the data about the system to understand the performance, the usage, and make any changes that we might need to adjust prior to meetings to make sure that everything's running at an optimal level. So over in our executive conference room, they will install new TV monitors. We will have an integrated virtual meeting capability. So we'll be integrated right into Teams or Zoom to have more of a seamless conference experience in that room, and new audio and microphone system as well. So our boardroom will see the most upgrades, I'd say. In addition to what you see here, we're going to have new TV screens on a little bit larger on the sides here, and then also for the public-facing audience seats. Each seat around the dais will have this Televic touchscreen tabletop station. It'll have a tactile button for the microphone. They will include cameras, video streaming. You can switch between looking at the agenda or the meeting materials. You'll have a voting button so that you can vote right from your seat and the results will come up on the screen. In addition to the cameras at each of your seats, there will be other cameras placed in the boardroom that will have wide shots of the entire dais, as well as shots of the speaker and the public comment podium as well. During the meeting, there will be actually 4 video panels that will be live during each of our meetings. And so the cameras will switch between active speakers, and people on the public-facing side will be able to choose if they want to see all 4 cameras at once, or maybe they just want to view one shot. So they'll have different options for these camera views. One feature is our speaker queuing in the system. So as you request to speak, that will pop up in the order in which it was received. And once your name is up and your microphone is unmuted, your camera will turn on, and you'll be able to speak, and then it'll go into the next one. So it'll have a much more organized way of filtering through requests. And another exciting feature is the voting feature that they'll implement. So we'll be able to remotely vote and be able to see the results on the screen. And I do want to highlight, this is just a high-level overview summary. We will have instructions and training all set up before we go live for our first meeting so that everyone can be as comfortable as possible. We'll be happy to do one-on-ones with you as well if you'd like. So we'll have a little bit of training time before we go live in September. So with that, we have the staff recommendation listed here to authorize the CEO to execute the contract with AVI to provide the boardroom AV equipment installation and ongoing maintenance, and include the 3-year base and 2 one-year options, and to exercise the option years at the CEO's discretion. And with that, we'll take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tour. Thank you for your work on this. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the item?
We do. We have several. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
This is so overdue. It's a disgrace. 10 years. That's almost trolley speed slow. I shouldn't have to take video of myself and upload your faces to the internet for all to see. In fact, there has been zero excuse why staff couldn't have set up a camera or phone on a tripod and hit the record button. Some lower quality video is better than no video at all. This is the public record for your life, for your children's children. Somebody please think of the children. How dare you guys. Make sure the video can get extreme close-ups of all of you, especially of Kaylin. Just kidding, but 8 different cameras sounds great. You could probably get away with less if they had the ability to be controlled, and if there was actually staff for that. Even though this item says 8 cameras, though, the diagram looks like it shows only 2 cameras. If it's possible, the picture-in-picture capability should be enabled during public comments to see both the speaker and the listeners. Adds to transparency, accountability, and is part of the experience that requires proper documentation for the record. Digital nameplates are a smart money saver until the screen malfunctions. I'm glad there's going to be an audio speaker in the hallway. And where would any human speaker be without a working timer? I've actually told people that MTS doesn't record videos of their meetings and people can't believe it. We've only heard of about 1 school board that doesn't and 1 city council, Lemon Grove, that doesn't. And Lemon Grove is overdue for that change too, and I will be bugging them until it is resolved, same as you guys. This is all about transparency and
30 seconds
accountability.
left.
Words people in government like to use but never live by. So obviously, yes, I support video and audio for MTS board meetings. It's about time everyone get a good look at who's running this dying public transit system. And after it's installed, I'll have to help you guys test it, of course. Maybe I'll even bring some confetti to celebrate. Thanks for listening, but do you really care? That's the important question. Now I got to talk to Monica in a few minutes. Thank you.
The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The button went away and then there was the mute thing. Anyway, yeah, I mean, because half the time, I don't know why it's taking so long for this, because you guys, there's times where, I mean, unless, and I don't know if it's just the mics, but you can't even hear what some of the board members are saying. Some of them are really loud and some of them aren't. And then just the fact that, you know, the people can't see you guys, it doesn't allow for transparency. So I think it's good that you're doing this. And at first I'm thinking, you know, do you really need all the many views to be able to go back and forth? But what really you should be doing is making sure that there's always a view on you guys, whether it's, you know, depending on how it's set up, like you could do 2 of those, but then always having the public as well while they're talking. But usually what happens is you'll go back and forth between the public speaking and the board. And so if you can have that many views and that many options, you should always have one on you guys and one on the public when they're speaking so that the people can see how you guys react. Because most of the time we have to come in there and do our own recording in order to show the transparency to the public of actually what takes place and how you guys treat people. Because Sean, you act like you listen to the public. You don't most of the time. You're talking to Brendan in the city. So it's like, I mean, people need to see that you guys, the way that you act and how you're looking at your phones and you're not really paying attention. But I feel like it'll hold you guys more accountable. So if you could do that and make sure that if you have that many views that you are using them in that manner
30
and not
seconds
just
left.
like switching back and forth needlessly, but always having a view so that the public can see and they can watch and see what you guys are up to. So kudos on you guys for doing this. But it's sad that it takes so long for it to happen because people have been missing out for years on what they could have been paying attention to and just bringing in more transparency.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item. Director Hall.
The best you get. Couple questions, and I apparently am losing my voice. I apologize. First of all, you're gonna make sure the mic works, I guess, so we can turn it on. That would be my first suggestion, because that's always been my challenge. Now, I know that we have something similar. We actually have 6 cameras with the city. And how will it close up on us personally? Or if say the person's talking, you said the camera will go on.
So it'll be similar to how if you were at your own workstation doing a Zoom meeting and turning on your camera, it'll be that type of view from your seat.
Okay, so that's, yeah, it sounded like that. I just wanted to confirm that. Okay, we actually pay a person to monitor it. we posted on Santee TV, and I think you can get this posted for the people that are interested. There is a link that only costs like $3,000, but we actually made our own TV station, but you can have it posted on a central link too. But do you have to pay somebody to manage the system, or what's the story on that?
So we will monitor the system internally here, but then AVI will also help, during that whole process, training and ensuring that if there are any modifications that we need to do to the system, they can help us with that as well.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
So we won't have to have a full-time person here sitting there during the
No,
meetings? Okay,
correct.
that was my concern. Will the screens for the speaker, will there be one for the speaker, or will it show up on the screen there like a 3-minute timer or 2-minute timer?
We are looking at including a timer within our presentation, similar
Right.
to how you see at other agencies.
Right.
So you'll be able to, the goal is to be able to visibly see it on the screen.
Yeah,
while they're
that's the idea.
speaking. Yeah,
If we could do that, that would be it's helpful to the person speaking for
Yep.
one, and it's helpful for other things going on too. And you kind of talked about the close-up then, so we'll have a close-up. The problem I have with this is every time I go to expand the screen, I send it somewhere else and I have to try and re-find it. Will it have the ability, I know with ours, we expand the screen, we still can't see it. Will it have, will we be able to see it, I guess is my question. Because you could, like this one, I can, believe it or not, I can actually see it because I'm nearsighted, but when you get to these kind of screens, sometimes you've seen the paperwork, you know what I'm talking about.
right. So you can toggle depending on what you want to look at, whether it's the live stream of what we're seeing on these TV monitors, or if you want to switch over to the agenda or materials. So it'll take up the full area of the screen you'll be able to look at.
But will we be able to expand it much or not?
Like touch screen zoom in. We'll have to find out about that.
Yeah, 'cause I think you said it was touchscreen, so.
We'll be able to zoom in.
I believe it's much like using a regular tablet.
Right.
You'll be able
iPad.
to zoom in on certain areas.
I assume it would be.
Yeah,
The voting part now, is that on screen or is that a separate?
it's all on screen. So
Okay.
no separate remote.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hall. This is an action item, so it will require a motion if there is one.
Motion.
All right, we have a motion from.
I will
Director Hall.
second it.
We have a second from Director McCann. Seeing no further discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
McCann,
Aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Step is absent. Goble,
Yes.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Aye.
Dillard,
Yes.
Gastel,
Aye.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Elo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with 2 members absent.
Thank you, clerk. That brings us to item number 23, which is a grants administration report. And I believe that we will go back to Julia Tour for this report.
Yep, I'll kick it off, and then I'll hand it over to Ken Etienne, our grants administrator. So for our grants administration report, we'll go over these items. Our team is composed of 2 areas, our administration side and our finance side. We focus in on our formula and competitive grants or discretionary grants. We work a lot with housing partnerships. We do a lot of reporting for our grants, and we lead all of the audits related to those efforts as well. And then certainly we have a key focus in obtaining regional support and collaboration for these efforts. So I'll hand it over to Kenna to run through a little bit of background on what we've been doing.
Good morning, board. So again, my name is Kenna Teon, and I'm MTS's grants administrator under government affairs. So for formula grants, both MTS and NCTD receive apportionment distributions for FTA formula programs. Sections 5307, 5337, and 5339 through SANDAG, as SANDAG is the region's designated recipient for the San Diego urbanized area. Allocation of the federal formula funds are split between NCTD and MTS, and the split is primarily based off of service statistics. So for example, miles traveled, populations, and population density served. Formula fund recipients are typically predetermined and do not rely on a competitive process. MTS's three primary funding sources are the Federal Transit Administration, Transit Security Administration, and the State of California. So for formula grants, formula dollars are built into MTS's budgeting process and are mainly utilized for preventative maintenance and maintaining our equipment in state of good repair and supporting our capital projects. The table on the slide demonstrates projects that are typically funded utilizing formula funds. And in FY 2024, MTS utilized federal formula funds in the amount of $113 million for FY 24 operating expenses and FY 25 capital projects. MTS attempts to maximize the amount of federal dollars in the operating budget for preventative maintenance in order to improve cash flow. It allows MTS to draw down funds and close the grants out quicker, which is highly viewed upon through our funding sources. Competitive grants. Competitive grants are also known as discretionary funding. They're grant opportunities that are awarded based on merits of an application via a competitive process. Includes proposal selection based on a team of reviewers. Competitive grant funding opportunities are posted as full announcements known as NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunities. And the Notice of Funding Opportunities contain comprehensive information on eligibility, programmatic details, and methods of submission. So recent federal competitive grants, grant application submittals are based upon prioritization from MTS's capital improvement program. And over the past year, MTS has applied for 14 federal competitive funding opportunities. 3 were awarded, the green highlights. 1 was no award, the orange highlight, and 10 are pending award notice, the blue highlights. So for state competitive grants, MTS has applied for 7 competitive funding opportunities, where MTS received 4 awarded, the green highlights, 1 no award, the orange highlight, and then 2 pending award notices, the blue highlights. And then to add, when MTS receives a no award outcome, we proactively request debriefs to better understand the why no award and utilize that information for future applications. So the grants and planning teams, we've remained committed and have continued to work with developers in building strong housing applications in hopes of continuing to receive grant funding for the region. This year, MTS partnered on 2 applications, the Alvarado Creek project, which included $7 million in transit enhancements, and the Avanzando Bayer project, which included $12 million in transit enhancements. And currently the grants team manages nearly 30 active grants. Once MTS receives award notification, the grant administration process begins. And project reporting is a significant part of the grant administration process. The procurement, capital projects, and grants teams meet once a month to review all the grant-funded projects and discuss progress to ensure proper and timely use of grant funds, as well ensure grant funding requirements are being adhered to. Let's see. So we will continue to look for grant opportunities to fund our conversion to an all-electric fleet and continue to maintain our system in a state of good repair. And with that, thank you so much, Board, for allowing us to present to you and for the letters of support provided over the past year. As we continue to apply for funding, we'll look forward to your continued support for future applications. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Tejon. Thank you, Ms. Tour. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, it's Truth. I'm actually still in this meeting because I'm waiting for the county to end their boring presentation. Do you guys believe that grants equate to free money? That's what Supervisor Joel Anderson believes, but it's not true. The government has no money until we give it to them, they demand it, or they simply take it. Seems like they do nothing but take these days, right? Your grant expert mentioned Sandag, and you see the head of the snake is over there on B Street, just like I said. And that's why I go to every single one of their meetings, because that is where the change happens. And it sounds like you guys here at MTS need me to inform them that you are in the hole by millions, millions and millions. I did lightly address that last time I was there, but obviously I don't realize how serious it is, because there's no grants that are going to cover the deficit, and that's outrageous. Sandag is the source of the money distribution, and they are also the source of regional governance, which means the elimination of local control. And y'all know that's true, whether or not you like them or not. I don't know what you can do to get more grants other than the press conferences, like I said. None of you are doing that. You can send Sharon to DC and waste more money if you want, but that isn't working, obviously. So sometimes you got to use the media as your tactic. It works. Playing political games works sometimes. It just does. And getting
30
the people
seconds
on your
left.
side works too. So yes, you should listen. Yes, more importantly, you should care. And actually, you should legitimately listen, as someone pointed out, and then you should care. And then you should act and make positive change. Thank you. Good luck with your grants.
The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I mean, they don't care. They do what they want. That's the sad thing, is that you guys should be representing the people and you don't. But, when you talk about affordable housing and all this, and then, you're using that to get more money for the transit, and we're putting people in these densely populated areas. It's insane, because I don't know how you can think that all of a sudden, when there's all these people in one area, that they're going to have cleaner air, as opposed to people being more spread out and doing that. But you're trying use all this to then say, because then we have to use like public transit or walk or bike. So you're putting people into a 15-minute city, but there is no affordable housing. I don't know why we keep having this talk where it's like, this is affordable to who? I mean, people are like barely surviving, and we're talking like $1 million homes are like affordable for people. And it's sad to see that it's like, because it's all a business, because nothing, if you solved any problems, just like homelessness, then you wouldn't have money to go and fetch, to go get grants, to go be like, we're going to go seek this money. We're going to do this. We're going to act like we're really providing these homes for people. When people are leaving in droves, more and more people are becoming homeless. I mean, just look at the state, $24 billion on homelessness, and look at what happened. So you can spend money, but all it does is make it get worse when you're putting it into the pockets of other people that are supposed to be providing this stuff. And in fact, it's been told
30
that
seconds left.
the money that was supposed to go to homelessness from the state has gone to facilitate more illegals coming in. So it's like everybody in the community is suffering, all while you guys sit here and pretend to get grants to make things better. But with the deficits, it's like it's not looking good. And you guys want to sit here and toss money around here and there. We got major issues coming down the pipe, and yeah, a lot of it you guys are complicit in because of this invasion.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. Do we have any board discussion on this item? Seeing no board discussion, thank you for your good work to secure grant funds for the agency. We appreciate all your efforts, and we'll hand it off to Director Ela Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I basically just wanted to say the same thing. I appreciate all the work that you all put into this. We had a tough conversation about what revenue looks like, and the work that's done to pursue these grant opportunities is very much appreciated. Julio from my team obviously works closely with you all. We see the requests for letters of support that come in, which only come after you all have done substantial work to tee things up. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. And I do want to mention we have the rest of our grants team in the audience, and they make a huge difference for the success of our team. So we have Eric Chang, Etta Bowman, and Nicole Christensen. So definitely want to recognize them as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the team. All right, seeing no further board discussion, we'll move on to our next item, which is item 24, the Alvarado Trolley Station naming rights. And we're going to invite Mark Olson to present this item. Once you get settled in there, please feel free to begin your presentation.
Well, thank you, Chair and members of the board. Mark Olson, Director of Marketing and Communications for MTS. And also joining us remotely is Matthew Corte. He's the Senior Vice President of Corporate Partnership and Development for the Superlative Group, who's our partner in a lot of these discussions that we're having about naming rights and sponsorship agreements. And this one is for the Alvarado Trolley Station, and the agreement up for your consideration today is with UC San Diego Health. So a little bit of background, the board approved an agreement for MTS to enter in a contract with Superlative to help with naming rights and sponsorship efforts with corporations and other organizations around San Diego. Since that time, we've been working with Superlative on an asset evaluation, monetizing our assets, which basically assigning a value to different things like specific high-profile bus routes or trolley lines or stations, and then developing that as kind of a springboard to start discussions with various organizations. So they developed a list of potential partners, a sales strategy, developed some sales collateral to go out then and talk to various organizations at the right time. Like in this situation, once they start to get a decent lead and have those early discussions and things start to look like they're going to bear fruit, then they bring MTS into those negotiations. And then ultimately, like with UC San Diego Health, we meet with them and further those negotiations and get to a point where we're going to establish an agreement and bring it before you today. The sales strategy, when they're talking to organizations, typically starts with the major assets. These are the high profile things like UC San Diego Health and our agreement we already have with them for the naming rights for the entire Blue Line. So that's a big thing that we want to put out there and try to establish those agreements and put that out in front. Also select stations like we're talking about today. We talk about all the different station assets that we have and all the different types of signage that we have and where they can get different exposure on our system with their target audiences. And then ultimately we want to secure these long-term agreements because that establishes a good source of non-fare revenue that we can depend on for a long period of time. Drilling down into the Alvarado station, this station is not one of our top ridership stations, 570 boardings per day, but it's a very important clientele that we serve here. It's the medical center with hundreds of beds right there, as well as some other healthcare services and healthcare workers who we're serving here. There's orthopedics, there's dental services, blood work, a few companies that do that in the immediate area. So really healthcare dependent. And it is excellent proximity to the medical center that UC San Diego Health just purchased right there. It's right across the street. So there's a lot of synergy right there. There's no park and ride option here. And it's situated along the I-8 freeway between SDSU and the 70th Street station. So very kind of isolated right there along the I-8 freeway on the Green Line. Their interest with UC San Diego Health, it was basically immediate. We saw the news in that they purchased the Alvarado Medical Center in December 2023, and a light bulb went off for us. We were talking with Superlative about that pretty much right away. This could be of real interest to them, considering our already agreement that we have with them for the entire Blue Line naming rights. And they have a familiarity with transit. They understand the benefits of it, the benefits to their workers, the benefits to their the patients. They have some real good proximity to transit in the area with UTC, Hillcrest, and now even East County since they purchased that in December 2023. Some of the partnership benefits for UC San Diego Health here, the station identification, as you can see, they have these big Type 1 monument signs out there at the Alvarado station, the image on the left. The naming convention that they'd like to go with is UC San Diego Health East Campus Medical Center. So a bit long for a trolley station name, but we're willing to work with them on that, and I'm sure they will allow us to shorten it in certain circumstances like timetables where it just, doesn't make sense to have such a long name on it. But system maps, lots of impressions there, destination signs, audio announcements as they're approaching the station, all the digital ways that we communicate our information out there with the website, social media, mobile app, and so forth. Superlative station valuation metrics that they came up, in total annually, we can assume about 26.3 million impressions at this station and throughout our system for UC San Diego Health with this agreement. The valuation associated with that is a little under $50,000. And again, it's more of the bottom tier of all of the different stations that we have, just because the ridership is much less than some of our bigger stations like San Ysidro or Old Town or here at 12th and Imperial. But still, I think the beauty is in the eye of the beholder here. I mean, UC San Diego Health wants to expand their presence in East County. They want to have those impressions. They want to have, that presence out there in East County and really expand it. So it's of value to them. And actually, you'll see in the next couple of slides that they're willing to pay more than this valuation effort. They're going to pay us annually about, on average, $63,000 a year. MTS benefits here, it's a stable source of non-fare revenue. I mean, if you look at this contract, it's going to be, it would be 1.33 million over 21 years. And you say, well, why 21 years? Why not 20? Why not 25? This is to align it with the existing UC San Diego Blue Line agreement. So both would expire at the same time. There is a possibility for a 10-year extension. So that adds some even more longevity to it. If things all go well, this could be as long as 31 years. So very good longevity there. It also deepens our connection with UC San Diego Health. Had a good long-standing relationship with them even before the naming rights agreement that we reached 9 years ago for the Blue Line. And then it also acts as a springboard and momentum builder for other sponsorship agreements. It's really a blue chip name out there in San Diego that Superlative's going to use when they continue their negotiation with other potential partners. So it's something that they can use in the sales pitch and hopefully will lead to some other organizations jumping on board with us with some naming rights agreements. As for the commission for Superlative, as part of their contract, for the first 10 years of any agreement, they get a 12% commission. For the back half of any agreement, meaning years after year 10, they get 10% of the commission. And then it could be an opportunity for us to even negotiate an even lower rate to get them out of the agreement a little bit sooner, just to align more with our contract that we have with Superlative, which is I think 6 to 7 years. So there is an opportunity to even lessen that if we pay them out up front. So with that, the staff recommendation is to authorize the CEO to execute a naming rights and sponsorship agreement with UC San Diego Health for the exclusive naming rights of the Alvarado Trolley Station for a period of 21 years and 10 option years. So with that, thank you, Chair, and we can answer any questions and take any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey there. You said blue chip. Who's blue chip? It could be MTS. So I'm assuming you were talking about UCSD. Well, that nefarious UCSD doesn't deserve to have their name on anything. I know all about them and some of their inside workings, not to mention what they did in 2020, which would amount almost allegedly to criminal actions upon human beings. But I know there are other inner workings too, and I don't say nefarious lightly. That's a nice word. However, that being said, MTS needs every penny they can get, so take it and run. Although $1.3 million is nothing to have naming rights for 21 years. They should be paying $100 million, especially with how much money they've got. How much is it going to cost MTS just to replace the Alvarado station signs? So this deal doesn't sound smart, good, or even remotely fair. You need to be demanding way more money, especially this time when MTS is suffering, running out of funds to operate. I don't know how anyone could think 1.3 million is fair. It is not. And I'm glad the presenter mentioned the name UC San Diego Health East Campus Medical Center Station. I mean, that is ridiculously long. I don't know what you can call it. UCSD is a horrible name, but I know it's their horrible name, so they need to come up with something. I didn't have an
30
idea.
seconds left.
But if they kept it, can you imagine the trolley will have already left the station by the time the name's announced? So there needs to be an agreement somewhere offering a shorter, more distinct name. Maybe Nefarious Stop, UCSD, here you come, East Campus. I don't know. I'm going to get back to the county. Thank you.
The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to see you guys and what you'll do for money and who you'll, but again, yeah, that isn't a lot of money, it's considering how much money UCSD has. And it's death care, it's not health care. They actually engage in murdering people with genocide shots and of the like. Any kind of, pretend health care by somebody in a costume wearing a white jacket leads to the destruction of your immune system and whatnot. So if that's what you were going to write on the thing, like if you want to die, go to this location, right? That would be good, because otherwise you're just giving them a bunch of propaganda like they actually make people's health better. Like, that's what's so sad is that it's such a joke to think that it's just like abortion. Ripping a baby apart limb by limb is like healthcare, right? So everything is inverted and inside out. So as long as you tell people like all the good, fuzzy, furry words that make you feel good, they're going to make you better. When in reality, they slowly kill you over time. And I know because I was a very good patient of them, big pharma, and all of the things that these doctors like to do. And they were the ones sitting here in 2020, 2021 and on at the county, sitting there lying to the people, saying that what the people were coming in and saying was false. When they were trying to warn the people about the shots that have been killing people and maiming them, even children.
30 seconds
But it's
left.
like, oh no, we need to shut the people up. So like, yeah, let these people kill more people by actually taking the trolley or whatever directly to the death chamber. So as long as you're going to tell the people the truth that that is death care and not health care, then yeah, spend all the money you want on it. But until then, all you're doing is sending the people to their 6 feet under.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item with Director Ela Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. One, I want to say thank you for pursuing this. Obviously, again, the revenue opportunities are important. I am curious, though, there's a lot of cost borne by MTS, if I'm reading the contract correctly. What are the numbers that we're seeing? Is that net or gross?
It is gross. So that's the total amount right there. And then there is a commission to superlative that we need to pay as part of this. Any kind of signage as part of the station that needs to be changed out, UC San Diego Health is going to pay for that cost. It's going to be about $6,600 for the on-site signage. Any kind of other changes that we need to make throughout our system, we're going to make those changes progressively as we're making changes to the other parts of the system. And we need to change out timetables or different maps. We'll change that out according to that. So we're not just doing it all at once just for this specific situation.
Okay, so the swapping out UCSD will cover? Because
Yes.
Okay, the section 3. Sorry, section 3. Subpart D. Says MTS will bear all the costs of replacement or repair of station signage. I assume that means moving forward. The production installation also looks like it's in the contract borne by MTS.
I can comment on those. I mean, so the intent of those clauses is just part of our normal, like we have normal station signage, maintenance practices and programs. And so whether or not that station is named after UCSD or was the existing name Alvarado, there's certain types of replacement that we have to do. And so we would continue to bear those normal costs related to station maintenance and signage maintenance, but the things specifically related to implementing the name change for UCSD or something specific that UCSD like requested, that they would bear those costs.
Yeah, for instance, like when we change schedules, for instance, we'll change the timetables. So we're going to do it anyway. So
Right.
That's not really a sunk cost in this contract.
Understood. Okay, well, that's good. And then the last piece that I'm kind of curious about is opportunities to build on these naming rights. For example, other billboard or signage opportunities. Does this limit our ability to do that in any way?
I think at this specific station, it will, but we don't really foresee this station as being a huge opportunity out there to do certain types of signage because of its proximity to the freeway, like digital billboards and things like that.
But wouldn't the proximity to the freeway provide opportunity to advertise to folks moving east and west on the 8th?
It could in specific circumstances, that's something that we need to dig into Caltrans with a little bit. I know some of our outdoor advertisers that we work with, it is kind of a challenge to build new signage that's in that close proximity to the freeway. But that's something that I think we could look into a little bit more with UC San Diego Health and this type of naming rights agreement. But this is primarily just for our property at the station. So
There's a federal law that highway funds are tied to that doesn't allow new billboards that are doing off-site advertising. So you can have a billboard that advertises the business at that location, but you're not allowed to do new billboards that just generally advertise. And that then the federal government ties compliance with that law to the state getting highway funds. So generally that's not, well, we get a lot of inquiries from advertisers that would love to put billboards at some of our stations.
Right.
That's a big hurdle. There'd have to be a change in that law for us to be allowed to do
Understood.
something
Okay,
like that.
so what we're being excluded from doing, we are already prohibited from doing by the federal government.
Yes.
Understood. Okay. With that, Chair, happy to provide a motion to approve the staff recommendation. Thank you again for the work on this.
Thank you, Director Ela Rivera. Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Good presentation. Always like to see creative ways to get more money out there. I think the public would say it's just too long of a name. UC San Diego, East County Medical Health Preparedness, Wellness, Distribution. It's just, it's too many words. And let's be fair to the public about an organization, any organization, taking advantage of public space to really convey a message more than just a name, perhaps. So I would agree with you that staff should be prudent in going from 2 words, Alvarado Station, to 8 words. Let's see how we can sharpen the pencil or whatever you want to call it there. Does this contract and the valuation align with other valuations of other contracts that we're doing?
I believe it does, yeah. And I think this contract is something that, we've done the valuation, Superlative has done the valuation, looked at all of our different properties and assigned it a value, and we're getting above and beyond what that value is assigned at.
Okay, but it is consistent with other agreements that we have, which is the key.
Yes.
Okay, we're not getting less, we would like to get more, but not getting less. Okay, I'll be glad to second Director Ela Rivera's motion.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Chair Goebel. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion from Director Ela Rivera with a second from Vice Chair Goebel. Clerk, please call the roll.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
McCann,
Aye.
Donovan,
Yes.
Montgomery Step is absent. Goebel,
Yes.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Yes.
Dillard,
Yes.
Castro,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Moreno,
Moreno, yes.
Evo Rivera,
Yes.
Gloria is absent. Whitburn,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with 2 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk. Item 25 is for Chair, Board Member, and CEO communications. Do we have any other communications? Seeing none. Before we move into closed session, let's see if we have any public comment on the closed session agenda. Clerk, do we have anybody wishing to speak on the closed session items?
We do. The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you guys engage in, like, say, employee evaluation or performance evaluations and whatnot when, I mean, should you really be doing that when you guys can't even be held accountable for the things that you do and you have many conflicts of interest and all these things, and then you're going to determine whether or not somebody's performance is up to par when yours isn't? It's just weird when it's like it continues to perpetuate problems when you're not equipped to be doing that. So, and the fact that you do all these things behind closed doors and then you guys never report out, it'll always be like, are there any actions to report out? No, we didn't do anything back there. We were just picking our noses. Like, I mean, but it's just sad to think that people that, should be being evaluated and the public should be doing it, but you know, then you're going to go and determine whether or not somebody is doing their job when you can't even do yours. I mean, it's it's pretty sad to see, but it's like, that's why it'll be good for you guys to have those cameras and whatnot, so that just people can continue to see. People have to see in order to really understand like what's going on. And usually when people come to meetings, they'll see that you guys aren't equipped to be doing something like this, especially when even determining like conflicts of interest when you're engaged in them.
30
So,
seconds left.
you know, it's just, I mean, but what a job, right? To like just be engaged in some benevolent, nefarious things and then go and, you know, kind of determine whether somebody else is when you're like, we're not doing that. So yeah, it's just interesting. It's when the world is upside down and inside out. This is what you get.
Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, truth, this is amazing that the county is so boring, goes on forever. Evaluation for Sharon. Your job actually needs to be eliminated. And it's not personal, just business, same as MTS, right? We, the people, could save $350,000 a year if your job doesn't exist. Add in the COO and the CFO and contracted auditors, and that's at least $1 million that could be saved. And how much does the evaluation cost? That's not free, right? Because there's no such thing as free time, energy, or money. And maybe I should give you my own evaluation, Sharon. I have not really seen you speak up anywhere, not at Sandag. I don't really see you engage with the public. I have nothing against you personally, as I said. You seem all right. I haven't seen you go out of your way, though, and I think you kind of have to when you look at the situation financially that MTS is in. I think you have to go out of your way. It shouldn't. Actually, it's kind of funny because the engagement you should be doing, I'm actually doing at Sandag. Come to think of it, maybe we should switch roles. You know, I could use that 350,000. I'd be doing a lot better. And for the conference with labor, I don't think it counts as negotiations if unions constantly threaten people in government and operate like a mafia, demanding fees from members in exchange for protection, alleged protection. Then
30 seconds
those
left.
fees just get funneled to political campaigns. It's actually a racket. But to end on a funny story, and this is related to Sharon's evaluation when it comes to ensuring that MTS provides a clean, sanitary system, I recently overheard a discussion between MTS workers. They said there were several packs of $5 Costco fried chicken left all over trolley seats, and they suspected those baseball people. What has Sharon been overseeing? Thank you guys today. Fun meeting. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. The next Board of Directors meeting is scheduled for June 20th at 9 in the morning. And at this time, we will move into closed session.
reporting out of closed session. Agenda item number 28, closed session, public employee and performance evaluation and conference with labor negotiators regarding the chief executive officer. The board conducted a public employee performance evaluation and gave instructions to negotiators.
This meeting is now adjourned.